All right, I think I'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody, and thanks for attending the first of the architecture lectures for this semester. I want to briefly mention a few upcoming lectures. Tomorrow night, Yasmin Vobis will be kicking off the Lasky Charette lecture. On February 17th, we have Brian Richter. He's going to give a lecture as part of the Fox Fridays workshop. I also want to promote the workshop on the following day, on the 18th. It'll be on advanced visualization. Recommend that workshop. On February 22nd, we're going to have Tatiana Bilbao talking about the project that she's been kind of master planning here in St. Louis. We're really excited to have her. And then there's going to be several other kind of panelists. And then on February 25th, Euler Wu will be lecturing as part of the Fitzgibbon Charette kickoff. We have some later lectures in March and April. We'll cover them as we get a little bit closer to those dates. But we're really excited about our whole lecture series this semester. Also, if anyone wants AIA credits, you can just put your information into the chat. I'll record that. Your AIA number will be quite helpful along with your name. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Monica Rivera, who will introduce our guest.
Thank you, Chandler, and welcome everybody to Washington University's Sam Fox School of Design and Visual Arts Public Lecture Series. And we are thrilled this afternoon to present the Historic Preservation Lecture sponsored by Esley Hamilton to establish an annual Sam Fox School lecture on the preservation of historic buildings and landscapes. Esley is semi-retired, but has worked as the preservation historian for St. Louis County Parks and Recreation since 1977. And for numerous years, Esley taught courses on historic preservation and the history of landscape architecture in our school. For almost a lifetime, he has been an active and loyal member of Landmarks Associations of St. Louis. He gives a sold-out lecture for the St. Louis AIA's annual meeting, and he's an honorary member of the AIA. And Esley is a former board member and currently on the advisory council of the National Association for Olmsted Parks. In May 2009, Esley's pioneering work was recognized by the University of Missouri St. Louis, where he received the honorary degree of Doctor of Arts and Letters. So we are very grateful to Esley Hamilton for supporting this lecture. And we welcome ETH Architects this evening for them to deliver the historic preservation lecture entitled Transhistorical. And again, my name is Monica Rivera, Professor of Practice and Chair of Graduate Architecture, and it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. And dear colleagues, ETH Architects, or in Catalan, Arquitectes, and today Roger Tudó will be the speaker. Their architecture studio is based in the city of Sabadell, north of Barcelona, and it was founded in the year 2000 by its four partners, David Lorente, Josep Ricart, Xavier Ros, and Roger Tudó. And they all graduated from the Vallès School of Architecture at the Polytechnic University of Catalonia. And I think they lead possibly the most interesting and radical practice in Spain, and their work has influenced and is still influencing a new generation of architects in Spain, but I would say also in Europe. Their work has been developed mostly in the Catalan territory with an incredible range of scale, different programs and complexity, from houses to housing, wineries, public institutions, civic centers, research centers for universities, and most recently they won the competition and commission for the extension of the Barcelona Museum of Contemporary Art, together with the Swiss practice Christian Gantenbein. Their work has been published in numerous international books and journals, too many to number, but I want to point out several very important monographic issues dedicated to their work. In 2020, El Croquis dedicated a volume to their work completed in the last 10 years. And before that, 2 other monographic editions were published on their work, one by 2G Magazine and another one by Arquitectura Viva. They have received significant awards, again, too many to name, but I will highlight the Biennale of Spanish Architecture and Urbanism, the Fritz Hoger Prize for Brick Architecture, the Hugo Rivolta Award for Social Housing, the European Prize for Interventions in Architectural Heritage, and most recently in 2021, just last year, they were distinguished with the Berlin Art Prize for Architecture, which is awarded by the Akademie der Kunst. They have also been teaching for some time now at the Polytechnic University of Catalonia, both at El Vallès and Barcelona schools, and most recently they have taught at Harvard Graduate School of Design and Option Studios, and currently at the ETH in Zurich. And just a few words about their work. I would say that their approach, and I won't go into describing their work, you will see it for yourselves, but I would say that their approach to architecture reveals an incredible awareness, an awareness of absolutely everything that's surrounding the problem at hand, and also a willingness to listen and to look critically at the place where they are building and working, looking to reuse or use what is already there, working with the weather, with materials, with fragments of history, to always transform and invent something that could have not been conceived a priori. I would say also that they are masters at strategically organizing, not materials, although yes, but matter. They organize matter so that in turns the matter manages things like moisture, vapor, temperature, air, radiation, and at the same time they're creating amazing places with very strong and unique spatial presence. So their interest in material behavior and their relationship with technology, I think, is very unique. They understand technology, they use it to analyze, to simulate, to calculate, yet to solve environmental comfort, they in a way refuse technological devices and mechanisms that you plug into the building. And instead, I think they turn sort of the whole building into technology, like almost like sophisticated machines made out of clay and glass. So I hope you will see this in the projects. And so I welcome Roger Tudó. We're looking forward to see and hear more about the work. Thank you, Roger, for joining us.
Thank you, Monica. Yeah. Wow. Fantastic description. Thank you a lot. And thank you for inviting us here. So I'm going to share its a specific approach because it's about, sorry. Do you see the screen? Yeah. Okay.
Looks good.
So it's a specific approach about historical presentation. It's our personal approach about historical presentation, and I hope that it will help to understand also other dimensions that as you were saying, we try to work in parallel. But our understanding of the historical, the pre-existing buildings or everything that we found when we are starting a project is around this idea of transhistorical. For us, it's hardly ever when we start a project without a pre-existing condition. So I think that this is quite clear for everybody, and probably in the kind of context that we are working in Barcelona with a quite dense urban condition, it's very difficult to start a project in an empty plot with no conditions. So the most of our practice is always dealing with pre-existing things, sometimes historical buildings, sometimes historical buildings, but not really beautiful, sometimes really beautiful, sometimes fragments of buildings, sometimes just the resources or the previous traces of something, or maybe the memory of something that it's not there anymore, but there is always something, a previous condition. And in this idea of transhistorical, our approach is to understand that architecture is always following this line of time, is always in transition. So we understand buildings starting from something previous, and we understand that even sometimes the building is completely new, or it's just an extension or a transformation. There will be a moment that other architects will be transforming our buildings. And understanding this, this reality, this notion of time, or this awareness of time, for us is probably the most powerful media of architecture. So trying to find a way that we can really understand this idea of time, or we can express this idea of time through the buildings in a way that finally our projects belongs to history in a certain way. So this is the idea of transhistorical, how to design buildings that are not anymore this ancient idea that we are doing projects like starting from zero. We are not starting from zero. We are starting from previous things. This is going to be transformed, and the transition through different historical periods. It's the most important notion that we want to express. So I'm going to start with some examples. This is maybe one of the most clear examples of this transhistorical approach. It's a building that used to be a kind of a workers' cooperative. From outside, it's quite a typical historical preservation transformation. So the facade was really interested, was protected. So we just did these few interventions in order to keep the qualities as the original. But then inside, the building was not in real good conditions. It was not protected. So it was supposed in the competition to be completely demolished. So we decided to don't demolish all the building, at least. We decided that starting from a plot that was completely full of buildings, it was the footprint of the building was completely all the plots, and it was by different periods, it was a kind of a messy of interesting but terrific transformations at the same time. We did a kind of a selection of what was important, and we tried to improve certain qualities of the space by making a very strategic and quite big demolition, that it's this transformation, creating a kind of a indoor street crossing the building, providing natural light, providing ventilation, making possible that the building is reborning in a certain new soul. So the transformation, it's something like that. We have an existing building full of additions and strange things. We destroy some of this part, producing like a big street inside. It's not an open street, it's a kind of a bioclimatic street protected by a roof, catching the energy of the sun, producing a kind of a better conditions and exterior, but feeling like exterior. And the transformation is something like that. This is a very terrible picture from the beginning of the construction process. That was the original building, and the transformation, it's something like that, to destroy certain parts in order to provide light and other qualities. And this is this kind of transformation, the mismatch between the different historical periods that is producing this big destruction. I think it's the most powerful thing of this project, because it's introducing quite a lot of things apart from natural light and all that. It's introducing a bigger scale in the building, quite bigger, kind of a public scale, the scale of the street. But at the same time, it's producing a kind of a paradox where destroying is the strategy of preservation. So this mismatch, I think it's explaining a lot of things, and it's really introducing the notion of time in the building. And this is obviously the first moment of the demolition, but the idea of the project is to keep the essential expression of this demolition during the project. So finally, this demolition was irregular during the whole building. So the condition of the bioclimatic area where the circulations and the people is coming and crossing the building, it's quite irregular and exciting. It's something that you don't know exactly where you are. And it's producing this kind of spaces. So this is the big empty space where we add some additional things like these stairs and some corridors to organize all the circulation, and other additional constructions that it's combining with the existing, but in a certain attitude where the new elements are not trying to be different from the original ones. We are trying to produce this continuity. The transhistorical idea is usually, in our case, is trying to don't look for the contrast between new and old. There is no interest on that. We are interested on understanding that everything is a pre-existing element and everything will be a pre-existing element. So more or less it's the same. You can see differences, but it's trying to produce the feeling of a whole thing, a whole one thing. So this is the sequence from this kind of spaces that are including like fragments or bigger spaces with a lot of light sometimes, but then sometimes it's darker and there is completely new constructions like these walls, but because of the existing foundations, these walls and columns are completely unexpected and quite messy because they belong to other periods, no? So there is a moment that you don't know exactly what is old, what is new. We maybe know that because we are architects that this is new column, but the people, the users of this building, they are understanding as only one thing. Obviously, there are other qualities in the indoor, the more conventional spaces where the activities are happening, always working with the existing. And finally, this idea of the big hole, the void, that it's explaining that it's been transformed, but at the same time it's including all these different periods. So the expression and the combination between new and old, it's trying to produce a new reality that works together. Another idea, always related to the idea of transhistorical, is the idea of reborning. So sometimes with these existing buildings, we need to understand what is going to be the most important thing, the thing that makes possible that the building is becoming convincing again. When you are taking something that it's already dead, the building is not working anymore, and you need to make a transformation to bring life again. And this is quite dangerous when you are working with historical preservation, because it's quite easy to go to some certain fake, trying to reproduce what it used to be, or trying to create something completely new. And this difficulty of this balance, how to produce something convincing, how to start again and reborn something that is going to be different from the original, even it was maybe super important in terms of history, but it's going to be different, but at the same time should be connected with the previous. And this is quite clear in this project. This is a competition that we won. It's a theater. It's a quite a special theater, very ancient theater. It's a theater placed in Barcelona. This is the Parallel Avenue. It's a kind of a Broadway avenue in Barcelona, where all the ancient cabarets used to be placed here. It was like a very special situation that it's been completely destroyed right now. And our theater, that it's this one, it's the only one that reminds all this magic moment, like a combination of cabaret, circus, kind of a very, very fragile constructions, and very, very special, very different from a Mediterranean. It was importing construction systems from Paris or even from the States. So it's a very strange situation in Barcelona. All the avenue used to be like that. Everything it's demolished right now, and this theater, the theater now is the only one that is still there, but in a very bad conditions. So this is the theater, and the theater, and our discussion was how to find a way to reborn this building, no? And after a lot of observation and analysis, we found that the most characteristic, the real nature of this building was this very special structure of wood, that it's really delicate, light and fragile, that it's inside a kind of even more strange condition, that it's a certain hangar, like an industrial construction between a church section and an industrial hangar. Everything really cheap, really light, and inside this kind of a industrial structure, they add this other fragile structure of timber, producing the balconies and all the ornaments of the stage and all that, but starting from this very industrial element. So for us, finally, the real substance of the project, what is really defining the quality and the soul of the project, is all these elements, the amount of timber beams with these geometries, combined with the rigorous structure of the big roof. So, but the reality was that everything was full of layers, transformations again. So our conceptual approach was, why we don't make everything? We erase all the layers, and we go and we recover just the most essential elements, the structure, with the beams, only the beams, like a little bit this reference from Pennone. So trying to catch a previous stage of the theater, like in this tree, you know, when the theater was younger in a certain way, and then understanding that this structure nowadays is not useful anymore because it's not allowed to, it's not enough not strong enough to support the new loads for a theater, and it's quite in a bad condition, so it's not possible to really reuse it. So the idea was, why we don't use that as the framework of another structure. So in a way that we can, with a kind of a amorphous material, we can fill the spaces in between the original structure in a way that the essential of this structure is giving the condition and the imperfection to the new structure. No, so the old timber structure will be there again. It will remain there. It's not going to work completely structurally, just a little bit, but it will be the one that it's giving the shape to this kind of lime concrete that it's filling everything. So in a certain way, it's like a fossil that it's keeping an organic thing inside, no? So a very mineral thing with the new resistance that we need for the theater, but catching inside the ancient theater. So you can see here how new columns are filling the spaces, and all these, sometimes the wood is, we keep it just empty because it's not going to be used for the people. So it's a kind of a, like a spider net a little bit, but we are just filling the spaces, and then you have new slabs, new walls, new columns. And this idea is just casting inside the existing and using the original shapes of the balconies and the stage, and reproducing a new version of the theater in the new plot that it's just beside. This is a kind of a bar that it's a kind of a social bar with different activities connected with the theater. And we are reproducing the same strategy of the balconies, opening the stage to the street. So the building, it's working a little bit like that, the theater inside, and the Ateneo, that it's a kind of bar, open to the street, producing like a small theater that can be used also as a theater, but really open to the street. So this is the original theater seen from inside the stage, and this is the new small theater attached to the original, where that usually is working as a bar, but it's producing again this feeling of the public space coming inside. So like an exterior street, but it's a bar, and it's also a library and other things. But at the same time, when it's necessary, it's becoming a small theater. So we have the original building and kind of a small reproduction with the same technique, always working with this combination with wood and concrete, producing this kind of a space in the bar, connecting with the theater, and with this kind of a specific solution where certain complexities that comes from the original structure and all the accidents and mistakes that the history is bringing us is producing very, very amazing and inspiring moments. And this idea that you can find in a specific way of building, that it's leading with the idea of the historical preservation. So it's really bringing you to convincing solutions. It's also related to the idea of trying to introduce new steps in the historical evolution. So instead of having a very conservative position and understanding that historical preservation is only preservation, so keeping the ancient things as the original or reproducing that, we do believe in trying to introduce this new tradition, so new systems, new techniques that are able to produce the same quality that we really admire from historical buildings. No, how to be able to be close to these qualities that we are always surprised when everybody likes historical centers and it's really nice historical buildings. No? So how to bring to this condition without reproducing and trying to produce something that it's contemporary but with the same qualities. For this, I'm going to use this example of this house that in this picture, it looks like a transformation of existing house, but in fact, it's a completely new house. So it's trying to produce this idea of new tradition. The story is quite strange because this is the original plot when we came the first time. Originally, the plot had this wonderful wall around the plot, like a fence. And all the city, all the village, it's a very, very small but beautiful village. Everything is built with the same stone, with this continuity and this kind of very beautiful streets. But the strange thing is that the city wants to, for urban regulations, they want bigger streets. So this wall should be destroyed and demolished. So even it was quite stupid, we did it because it's the law. But we decide to reuse all the stones and to build a new wall in the new position with the bigger street, and to build a house that it's reproducing in a certain way the idea of the wall, but not in a way that we are doing a kind of a fake of an original wall from this village. So trying to understand which are the real qualities of these walls and try to make the contemporary version of that. In our understanding, the real qualities that in this village, all the walls are structural walls. They are in one single layer, not with different specialized modern layers. It's mono layer, structural, but at the same time, we need new conditions for isolation and other things that contemporary architecture needs. So we reinvent tradition, looking for something that it's contextually following the same as our neighbors, but in a contemporary version. And that was also affecting quite strong to the typology. The house, instead of being in the middle of the plot, it's a very large house, organize it in a quite radical way because it's large. It's like a large corridor. So there is a more conventional part here with kitchen, dining room, living room, but then everything is a kind of a radical transition. You across a porch. This is completely outside, but with roof. And then the rooms are this kind of niches connected with a kind of gallery connecting all the different rooms. So you have to across in front of the room of your brother or your mother or whatever, or go through the garden because, you know, in Barcelona and surroundings, the weather, it's not so bad. But this opportunity of building a very large house, trying to produce a very opaque, dense and structural wall outside, and at the same time producing an open feeling inside, was really bringing a very strong opportunity. And this is a really fantastic place to live because of this radicality. And this is built with this combination of materials, reusing the stones, obviously, but mix it with a kind of a mortar that it's made with earth, local earth, lime instead of cement, and introducing a kind of a recycled glass that it's introducing an isolation quality. So it's really bringing air inside. So the mortar is quite light. So we produce this mortar like a soap, and this is built by layers, a little bit like rammed earth. And depending on the position of the house, we are introducing stones inside or not. So everything is built like a concrete structure with a framework with wood, but built by layers of 20 centimeters. And then depending on the position of the wall, we have walls with no stones. So when we need isolation, we don't put stones inside. When we are in the facade exterior, we bring the stones to the surface in order to see the stones. And when we are inside, for example, around the bathrooms or these party walls inside, we fill it completely of stones, even they are not going to be seen. But we need thermal mass, we need stability, we need to keep energy inside. So instead of a very light wall like that, this is a very heavy wall. And from outside, we broke the surface. So you can see here the texture of the framework, but then we destroy the surface in order to find the stones. So then we have the original stones of the wall in a different position, but with a convincing solution, contemporary solution, structural solution, one layer as the traditional ones. And inside it's changing completely. This is another idea. It's still with a certain vernacular idea, but a contemporary version of vernacular where everything is open. Everything is becoming a super large porch. It's a fantastic place for living. And then the sequence is adapted to the topography, producing this very strong contrast between very glass and open relation and very heavy and a strong feeling of matter with the walls. This is me enjoying. And you can, across all these rooms, crossing the structure with this radicality of the beds just beside the corridor. It's like living inside a cave, but with this very, very strong quality of being surrounded by this matter and very connected to the exterior. So from outside, again, this kind of a vernacular construction that because of the technique is really becoming convincing. It's completely like the original ones. Maybe here it's still too white, but by the time it's going to be the same, and the other is really working well in the context. And this idea of the context is also very clear in this idea of the syntax. So this is following a very beautiful sentence of an architect, Catalan architect, that it's Lluís Clotet. He used to say that syntax is more important than vocabulary. So I like a lot this sentence because for me there is certain hidden structures in the sites or in the construction systems in the different contexts that are really defining the soul of each place. And when you are able to find something that it's really catching this hidden structure, the syntaxis of the site or the construction, that it's really appropriate for this place, then vocabulary is becoming not important. It's just emerging from the syntaxis, no? And this is very clear in this project that Monica was mentioning, about the extension of MACBA Museum. It's the Contemporary Art Museum from Barcelona. As she said, we are doing this together with Chris Gantenbein. We won the competition and we are working still on that. This is the competition version. But this is a very complex place, very urban at the same time, but full of heritage, important buildings, historical buildings. And the extension, it's in front of the mayor building that it's here. So just on the other facade, connected by underground, but extending existing convents, churches, and other buildings, also contemporary buildings. So it's a kind of a mix of different periods. And that was really difficult. And our strategy was trying to understand what was really this syntax of the site. And starting from this drawing from Clotet again, we discovered that everything is, this area was, this is an ancient drawing, but it's, everything was defined by this kind of space organization based on structural elements. All this area used to be religious facilities like convents, churches, and other things. And our building is in between all this area, and it's reusing part of these existing buildings. So we discovered that instead of doing a new different building, what we should be maybe was a kind of a strategy of growing what was already there and what was been defining the syntaxes of the site during centuries. So the strategy is trying to connect the new museum through the church, the existing church, using the church as a kind of a street or kind of a hall. And then in another section, introducing the new volume and a lower one, but trying to build everything with a kind of a technique that is extending the original syntaxes and technology. So the building is something like that, very simple, a very low building, producing a kind of a public roof, trying to reduce the impact of the new building. So something soft and more human, like a human scale in front of Richard Mayer original museum. And the big cabinets and the big space, exhibition spaces is just a little bit apart. So in the same scale as the church, and joining everything, there is this kind of portico that it's trying to make this transhistorical moment where everything is rooted in one. So this is the transhistorical evolution of this building. It used to be a convent. You can see in transparency the final version, but the different steps where everything it's been growing, and this is our last step where we decide to grow and to use the idea of the buttresses that is defining everything, all the syntaxes. It's based on structural decisions and the expression of the buttresses, big buttresses. So the new building, it's extending the existing buttresses, producing new buttresses, big spaces in between, like the original ones, and a big portico joining everything. This is the final resolution. I'm not going to explain in detail, but again, the complexity of joining everything. Here it looks like more volumes, but in fact, all the strategy of the buttresses is just linking one to the other, producing in a certain way something that it's full of layers. So it's transparent, but at the same time, it's very massive. You can see through that pre-existing buildings from different periods, and everything is producing a new reality that it's bringing everything together. So there is a moment where the apses and everything it's together, and we try to produce kind of new syntaxes that it's dealing with the existing. So this is, for example, part of the existing. So we are trying to work together, and also when it's possible, we broke the rules and we are not following exactly the same system. So basically the strategy is to use structural walls and buttresses, same technique. Sometimes it was a stone, some of the buildings are already in brick, we extended with brick, but just following this, producing this idea of a building, a kind of big buttresses spaces, like again, bioclimatic conditions, big new rooms, buttresses, another room, buttresses. So this sequence of routing one to the other. And finding the technology of that. The walls are completely huge, massive, and archaic, and the slabs are contemporary. And this is the idea of combining technologies is connected with this idea of active matter, or the idea that Monica was introducing of organizing matter. When we are using a pre-existing building, that it's already something, it's amount of matter there, but if we find a way to activate this building, to improve the existing matter and to bring it to a new metabolic condition, then is when the idea of something that is coming from previous periods is making sense in contemporary life or in contemporary society. No? So introducing new elements that are by activation producing a new version of the existing. This is another Civic Center. It's quite a strange program, combining classrooms for adults. It's quite strange, but it's starting from an existing fragment of a building that was not exactly a complete building. It was just a fragment, and we decided that we wanted to use it. Some of this was protected, but we wanted to use it, and we want to build the new parts with the same logic. So growing again with the same technique as this original facade. So structural walls, bricks, and then inside building something with the same technique, structural walls, but obviously introducing these contemporary reasons, no? And you can start to see here this again bioclimatic spaces that are improving the behavior of all that. But again, the walls have this kind of a certain archaic condition, really big. In this case, combining with these bricks of glass, because this used to be, the original building used to be a glass factory. So it's a kind of a memory of the original, but basically we are working in a traditional structural wall, extending and using the original one. So this is still working as a structural wall, but the rest, the new parts, are with the same technique. And on the top, you see that there is this new thing. And this is what is changing everything, and it's the active part of the project. So we have a very massive building on the bottom and something really light on the roof. It's a roof that it's protecting from the rain, but at the same time, it's a solar chimney that it's moving the air and it's transforming and taking advantage of all this massivity. So this is the the combination with the existing, extending, combining with other materials, sometimes producing a second layer inside. But the main problem of the building was that it's really full of people, adult people in small classrooms and polyvalent spaces with a lot of people breathing and producing internal heat. So in Barcelona, it's quite warm in summer. So we have a double problem. We need to recover the air in terms of the quality of the air, obviously CO2 and smells, whatever. But at the same time, in winter it's perfect. We have people inside producing heat like stuffs, but in summer this is a big problem. So we didn't want to use mechanical systems for that, and we invent this idea of the solar chimney in order to dissipate all this dirty air or to warm air that we have in summer. And the solar chimney, for the ones that maybe you don't know, it's something transparent. So it's catching the sun radiation by a greenhouse effect. Inside there is a black layer. So in between, everything is getting really hot. In summer, maybe 80 degrees. So the air, the warm air, wants to go up by thermodynamics. And because it's going up, it's sucking the air inside the building. So during the year, this building, it's breathing and it's open. It's completely open because of the direction of the sun. In winter, it's just moving a little bit air just for the quality of the air. And in summer, when we have the problem of the warm, we have the advantage that the sun could be a natural engine. So it's the sun, it's working as a natural engine, moving 10 times the volume of the sorry, I have to go. 10 times the volume of the building in 1 hour. So the building, it's catching air from the underground. It has a bioclimatic buffer. Then the air is going inside the classroom and it's going out, sucked by the solar chimney, something like that. Then the combination of the existing and the new is trying to fit because of the techniques. And this is the bioclimatic in between space, the classroom facing the existing, something in between like corridors, the other side with other kind of spaces, connecting with another bioclimatic space that it's connecting with these chimneys. Again, you see the transparent and the black, the air is coming out. Obviously, after a lot of investigation. And this is producing this amazing idea that the building is doing itself, and it's really taking advantage of the massivity of the building. We can have an open building because it's really stabilized with this amount of matter, but at the same time, the air is moving naturally. And this is the last example. It's talking about the idea of the existing one. It's not exactly the building. It's something that it's surrounding you, but it's producing a lot of influence, and you need to be rooted to the existing. This is a winery that we built in this small village in Gratallops. They are producing in all the village really wonderful wine, and it was obviously the problem of the context. It's a very vernacular context. Our building is this one. It's beside the church, which is quite difficult in terms of contextual, and at the same time, it's so close that it's quite difficult to build close to this building in terms of techniques. But on the other side, it was all these pre-existing neighborhoods here and some other pre-existing walls in our plot that were introducing certain complexity about how to deal with everything, how to be rooted. The reality is something like that. This is the church, it's really tall. Smaller houses all around and neighbors all around. This tree is, it was, because now it's not there, but it was inside our plot. That was an existing building but destroyed, but with very interesting and tall, like 15 high walls made with stone. Very, very amazing, very high walls and very big walls, heavy walls. So that was our original matter, our pre-existing condition, our preservation, and all the relation with the neighbors here, houses. It was a problem of privacy, but at the same time, a very beautiful relation. And the idea of following the urban conditions, it was allowed to build all the footprint on the ground floor, but on the upper levels, it was only allowed this black area. So it was necessary to keep something empty. We finally decided to, in order to find this rooted relation with the context, to create again a kind of a street connecting or creating a distance between the complexity of the neighbors and the existing walls here. And the new building that was going to be that. So we produced the biggest regular and higher building that we can build. And the rest, it's quite empty, not empty completely. It's connected by a kind of roofs, but in another scale, producing something that it's like an exterior street, but with some rain protection. So you can see the complexity here, the houses, the existing walls, and the new winery. Trying to go a little bit underground, but not much, because we have the church, and it was dangerous to make a very, very strong underground area. So we have a thermal problem also. Usually wineries in Spain, when it's possible, they are underground because it's the best thermal conditions, stabilized. So another big problem of this project, a part of the context, was how to produce the conditions for the wine that are very strong in terms of climatic without being underground. Underground, it was only the barrels. So all this amount of bricks that you will see here is the condition, looking for the condition to produce something similar to being underground. So this is the underground. This is really a comfortable place for the wine, the barrels and all that. This is just the storage, the natural stone. And on the ground floor, you can see this street that you can come from here and from the other street. So it's you can just go across. It's open to the people, but can be closed during night. It's a logistic area for the things that can be outside, that they don't need specific temperatures, but at the same time is the circulation for tourists or tasting or something like that. And this area, it's roofed by different levels with the stairs. You can go up, have different terraces, always outside. And inside there is this big room with the tanks surrounded by different layers, and with this really massive solution that you can see here. This is a wall made with 7 walls of bricks, like 1.5 meters of wall. And you see here different levels of these terraces. So this is the context. Again, for us, was very important to produce the syntaxis of the place. So very difficult to build something big, very difficult to build something that it's contemporary, but it's surrounded by vernaculars. So we found something like that we think it's working. And there is this big entry for trucks and all that. When you come inside, you start to realize all these existing walls and the different levels for tasting and tourist activities. Then inside you see the tanks. So there is always a kind of a visual relation between this street and inside. And this is always protected from rain, but open to the climatic conditions. So these roofs are the ones that are really connecting the pre-existing neighbors' walls, the different levels, and producing a kind of soft relation with them, connecting the walls that they need an additional support because they were so tall that they need kind of a buttresses also. So everything is working together, producing an in-between space prepared for enjoying, and then inside is the production. So the different layers, and there is a final moment with the patio that you are connecting with the other street outside. This is the church. So again, from outside, the brick is finished with a kind of a lime painting, very rough painting. You still see the brick, but it's a kind of a very dense and imperfect surface. This is the volume, and when you come inside, again, the big room, then there is this thermodynamic moment where all these layers, 7 layers, and all this roof that it's made with bricks, again, it's a system to keep the temperature like a little bit like underground. So when the temperature of the night is okay, they can open, and then the air is through the walls, refreshing all this massive, so keeping the fresh of the night. But there is a moment that, well, this is all the complexity of the bricks, that it's amazing. Then the roof is also made with the same, it's a kind of a radiator of bricks. But the problem in Gratallops is it's so warm in summer that it's not enough with natural ventilation at night. Night cooling, it's not enough. So we made this invention that it's using not only the night temperature, also using the night radiation. So we are using a water roof that sometimes it's during the night, it's outside. During the day, it's inside the isolation in connection with the bricks. During the night, the water is dissipating all the internal heat and taking the fresh of the universe. So it's exchanging by radiation by the outside of atmosphere. So you know that it's minus 300 degrees or something like that. So even it's quite far away, and the temperature of the air, maybe it's not so cold. By radiation, you still have an exchange. So this water is becoming fresh at night in summer, and then during the day it's falling down inside, refreshing all the bricks, and then there is a natural convection that is extending this energy of the water through the walls. And obviously then the tank is affected by the walls, the wall is affected by the air that is going through, and it's affected by the radiator over where the air is crossing, and over that there is the water roof that is connected with the universe. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, very much for the amazing lecture, and it was great seeing the work and the drawings explaining all these very sophisticated technological planning, right, made into like very tight machines. It's amazing to see how you manipulate the resources, right? And we'll be taking questions in the Q&A and also in the chat, so feel free to connect. And we have some, but in the meantime, while we wait for more questions to populate the Q&A box, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, this relationship of manipulating matter, as you explained, but also manipulating form together. So voids and massiveness and voice together with the planning of technology that result in a casual character, but it's also monumental. It's sort of a monumental industrial character that is vernacular. So it's very complex and layered. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your ideas on character, or resulting character, or controlled character.
No, character is a very interesting word. Very difficult, no? But when you have to catch the expression of something, I think that the best way to be convincing is to find deeper and not very superficial strategies. So go to these hidden elements that sometimes are connected with technique, but sometimes are connected, for example, the monumental condition of things, the disproportion of things. I think it's very important in the perception of spaces, and in our understanding, there is a moment that certain disproportion between what you expect from a space and what is really the dimension of this space is producing the opportunity of feeling other things that we are not used. For example, this kind of thermodynamic relation, sometimes when the space is higher, you feel it strongly, or certain gravity feelings. Sometimes you need to destroy certain domestic scale, because if not, it's very difficult to be in relation with this super bigger scale as gravity, or super bigger scale as the city, no? So the scale and the monumentality, I don't like monumentality, but the disproportion, I think it's interesting to bring to the character of things.
Thanks.
Sorry, my English is terrible.
No, it's okay. We have a couple of questions, and also a comment by Ashley Hamilton that I want to share. He says, thank you for your inspiring talk. The way your buildings fit into these historic spaces is really beautiful and respectful, while at the same time being amazingly innovative. So that's from Ashley Hamilton. And there's a question from students. Patrick Hathaway is asking, in your projects, are you in contact with the builders, contractors to speak about various local construction techniques? And do you have a background in construction or construction methods?
No, I have a background because I used to be a professor of construction, but at the beginning, you don't know anything, so don't worry. You can learn from the experience. Monica, for example, is an amazing builder with no background of that. So you are super good on that, and it's just because you like it, no? And you are interested on these things. So in our case, probably the culture of Spanish builders is quite different from the States. There is this more traditional companies still using the traditional systems. So it's true that some of these constructions needs at least to have a good selection of with who you are going to build that. It's not everybody, because there is a certain knowledge that it's obviously we have the knowledge, but we are not putting bricks one over the other. So we need always good companies that are in between tradition, but not too much, because then they don't understand anything. So something in between where there's still good workers doing beautiful things.
Thank you. So a couple more questions. We'll take some more. One by Francisco Koch. He's asking, I'm curious if you could speak more about preservation in terms of preservation of memory, of not just materials from these places, but of the culture and people of these places.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I forgot a little bit. In the first building, for example, in the Utzon Center, that was quite important in the process. It was a very open and with a lot of participation, with a lot of citizen participation, because in fact the competition was organized because it was a kind of very strong organization coming from citizens trying to recover this building. So it was a very large and interesting process of understanding the history of this workers' cooperative, what was happening there, all the histories, and it was quite beautiful in relation to this kind of a more social dimension. And I think that all these people, they really enjoy it, and they like the building then connected with materials, because they still see the memory of what was the original building on all these patinas and trasses and all that. So sometimes it's like that. Sometimes we are very, very about construction and all that, but sorry. Also the Magba building, I think it has a very strong urban condition. You know, in front of Mayer Museum, it's one of the most famous skaters squares in the world. So it's a very strong social and cultural urban condition that it's part of the project. Maybe I didn't explain, but it's a very strong urban space in front of.
Thank you. Maybe we have time for a couple more. I know people have class, but I think it's worth. There's a question by Andrei Velikovsky, student, thanking you for the presentation and asking about the process that you take in technologies through your designs. I'm not sure if he means the software, but for example, in the last project with incorporation of water cooling systems.
Yeah, we are always working with this kind of parallel research. It's something that we are working with consultants for doing that, because we don't have sometimes we don't have the knowledge, sometimes we don't have the technology. But basically, the most of these ideas are coming through our interest on these things. It's obviously together with other engineers or architects that are helping us and inspiring us also, but you cannot do it if you are not really interested. You need to really look for that. It's not, you cannot call somebody and it's going to give you these ideas. So the ideas usually come from us, and then we need people helping.
Yes, in that sense, I know how that work has been consistent for 20 years, or that interest and that search has been there all along. So that consistency, it shows through the work. And there's maybe a last question, if you could, from Nader Boschetti, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, the quote, when you quoted Clotet about syntax being more important than vocabulary, if you could more precisely define syntax or syntaxes, right? Okay.
Well, maybe I'm not an expert on syntax, but syntaxes is studying the structure of the language, no? the structure of the grammar and all that. So this is the order of things, the invisible rules that are really organizing languages, no? So that's why I think that in a metaphoric way, in architecture, we can also find certain rules, hidden rules that are organizing what is really important. And maybe vocabulary, it's adding another rich quality, obviously. But from our point of view, this more robust condition of syntaxis is more strong than vocabulary.
Words. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So I don't know if you have time, Roger, for another maybe last question, but and I think we can leave it at that. We have a couple, so I have to see. For Juan Villafañe and from someone I think working in the US, and how it's very difficult to accept changes to historical landmark structures here. He was wondering about how much convincing do you need to do with the community or the city to make these compelling modifications, and whether that's a real struggle.
No, here it's not easy, but probably not so difficult, because in the States there's only a few historical buildings, and obviously I understand that maybe everybody is very conscious that this is a treasure and you have to keep it as much as possible, but our reality is different. We have much more historical buildings. Everything is super dense. We need to reuse buildings, and sometimes practical reasons are opening opportunities to the historical buildings, and sometimes it makes no sense to still understand that there is good or bad buildings, because, for example, in the sustainability discussion that I didn't mention, everything is still deserting the opportunity of preservation, no? Even the contemporary new architecture maybe needs this opportunity. So, but it's not easy. And dealing with heritage department is difficult also in Barcelona.
Okay. Well, thank you, Roger. I think that answers a little bit also Mila's question about the process of deciding what gets demolished and saved. But I think we're going to leave it at that. I thank you so much for your time and for your lecture, and really enjoyed seeing the work again. And yes, we hope to see you in the future with more lectures or participation of some sort. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining.
Okay, thank you, Monica.
Bye-bye, Roger.